Great, thank you everyone for bearing with us for an extra 5 minutes. Tonight's board meeting starts with the tax rate hearing. Mr. Norris.
Thank you all for the opportunity to talk about taxes. I know everybody's excited to talk about this. So each year, as part of our annual tax rate setting, we receive information from the assessor's office, and we receive information from the Missouri State Auditor's office on preparing our tax rates. Make sure I do this in order. So as part of our tax rate, as part of this process, we have a voter-approved tax rate ceiling, which was passed in 2013. The max rate for our tax rate is 4.33 for residential and 4.93 for commercial. Our calculated tax rate ceiling, which we go through every year, which is the maximum amount that we can set as a tax rate for our community, is set at 3.013 for residential and 4.073 for commercial. Again, we're heavily regulated on these prices. We are in a we're in a reassessment year. Every odd year, we're allowed to reassess, which the assessor's office performs. In non-reassessment years, we typically hold a 0.5% increase. And this year, we're able to capture up to 2.9% because of the RSMOs and the Hancock Amendment and Consumer Price Index. So again, we are in a reassessment year. A significant portion of our funding does come from our tax rates. Our normal cycle for setting our tax rates, especially in a reassessment year, is in March. We have our non-binding tax rate that's set, so you may have received letters that said this was the tax rate. That tax rate is going to be wrong because we get new data in June, and then we get new data again September 15th. Tax bills will go out in November typically. The majority of our collections happen in December, and then the remainder in January. Those funds are what we use to complete the rest of the year. We typically look for about 30% fund balance in reserves in order to operate through November without short-term borrowing. So, personal property makes up about 12% of our assessed value. If you have personal property, you probably do. Everybody drives a vehicle pretty much in the state of Missouri. So at that, the true value of that vehicle, 33%, is what is your assessment base. Just a short list of things that could be on that. Motor vehicles, recreational vehicles, trailers, farm machinery, livestock. It's always one that I love.
Computers.
So if you're in a commercial setting,
okay.
the furniture and potentially the tech that's in that space can be assessed.
The FF&E. Okay. Yeah.
Not like your personal stuff.
Yeah.
So real property. So again, real property is what we typically talk about as residential, commercial, and agricultural. You'll see that the assessment rates here of the real, what we call a lot of times the appraised value, the assessed value is set at 19% of the, what you would say, what you potentially sell your home for. 32% of commercial, and then agricultural is at 12%. We don't have any ag, but we still have to say it. So factors impacting our tax rate. Again, we are in a reassessment year. Typically, we will receive funds through new construction. New construction acts outside of the assessment process. So basically, it's something that wasn't in existence last year that came into existence this year. Or it's the expiration of an abatement. So this year, we do have a partial abatement that expired for the Drury project, and we'll be reporting that as part of our income. Our income is limited, notwithstanding new construction, at the lesser of 5% or CPI. Consumer Price Index was set at 2.9% this year. We also do have a partial Prop C rollback. So sales taxes are collected in our state of Missouri, and they're distributed to school districts based upon our student population. We return 50% of that collection back to our community in the form of a Prop C waiver. So that is about just under 10 cents. If you're wondering, it's about $487,000.
I was wondering, thank you.
Everybody's always like, how much do we get back to our community through our rollback?
That was a good number to have, $487,000 back. Okay, that's great, thank you.
So factors, the primary factor currently impacting our tax rate is the senior citizens tax freeze. This will be the first year that senior citizens tax freeze takes effect. So commonly, you probably hear me talk about Senate Bill 190. This is where anyone over the age of 62 years does have a frozen tax year. Their tax year would have been last year as their base. This year, they'll receive a credit on their taxes for the difference, so whatever the reassessment increase in their taxes has been. We still feel that our projections are conservative enough to account for the amount of loss that's going to occur. We will know those final numbers in November. There's data in here about how we came up with that number, so we used Census Bureau data to come up with a sort of average of what the impact would be to our community. We understand that there could be offsets based on people that don't own their property, cohabitation, people that live in assisted living, but this is the best data that we had available. So how much did assessment grow? So you will see that residential grew by 11.6%, commercial grew by 7.7%, and personal property grew by 5.7%. This amount includes the new construction as well. So the over $2 million of commercial property that was added to our assessment is included in these amounts. This is what our assessed value looks like over the last 10 years. You'll see that the residential property continues to climb, and also our total. The majority of our growth is happening on the personal property side. We are seeing some minor growth in the commercial side, but as we grow, the leverage of assessed valuation continues to fall on the residential property. So we are still continuing to fulfill our discussion about rolling pennies off of capital projects and into operations. This year we are moving from 25 cents to 17 cents into from capital projects into operations. So we're going to keep 17 cents. That will leave just over $800,000 of funding from local taxes into capital projects to continue to fulfill our projects that we have pending. So we're moving 8 cents. That's about $407,000 that we're moving out of capital projects this year into operations. Debt service, we're still keeping, so in 2020 we passed our recent tax levy for debt service. We're sustaining this amount at 89 cents. And for previous years, we were having a rollback. We're not having a rollback this year. This will be the first year that we've had since this has been instituted that will be setting our tax rate at the amount that's sufficient to cover our debt. So local tax rates. We do, because we're a multi-rate county, so St. Louis County is the only county in the state of Missouri that sets a multi-rate. Everybody else does a single rate. I guess we're lucky. So I get to do this 3 times. Actually, I get to do it 4 times. So we set a tax rate for residential, commercial, personal property. Then we also do it the blended rate, which is what everybody else does. So with this rate, residential, we are seeing a decrease. So again, just to reiterate, as our assessed valuation grows, our levies fall. So we're only allowed to capture 2.9% growth. I'm going to say that. I'm glad I'm seeing everybody's like nodding. So with this growth, we had to see our levies fall. So our levies fell for residential by 22 cents, commercial property fell by 60 cents, and personal property. The difference in personal property is because previously we had a recoupment. This year we don't have a recoupment, so that 3 cents is the difference in what we would have had as a recoupment in the previous year. Blended rate. So again, said we do our tax rates 4 times. This is where you're going to see the change in the rate. The total rate is dropping by about a little more than 19 cents. So we're not losing. Our levy has fallen by almost 20 cents. And then you can see how we've moved the capital project funds and we've sustained the debt service funds. So how much new money are we receiving? So this year we're receiving an additional $918,000. This is across all of our funds. This includes capital projects and debt service, operations. So operating, when we say that, we mean capital projects and general fund. So new money into operations is $376,000. So you see $541,000 is increased funding into debt service. The primary reason for that is because we're able to retain our 89-cent levy. So as our operating levy continues to fall as we see growth, debt service levy isn't doing that. We are showing the 96% collection rate, so this is the second year that we're showing this amount. We are confident that this amount will sustain through this year. We'll continue to reevaluate as we start to receive our collections through December. We really don't know what our total collections are until the end of May, because that's when our protested funds are released from the county. So this is just the recommendation for the board. We are not asking for action right now. This is solely the recommendation that we'll bring forth in the memo when we go into open section. So we're asking for the residential rate to be set at 3.8198, the commercial rate to be at $4.879, personal property to be 4.906. But these are inclusive of the debt service rates, and they're inclusive of the proxy rollback. Our blended rate, incidental rate, we're asking for so incidental, operations, general fund. Those are kind of interchangeable terms. We're asking for 3.2397. Debt service rate, we'll see that separate because that will go into Fund 3 for debt service at 89 cents and capital projects at 17 cents. For a total blended rate of 4.3087. Again, we're not reporting anything on our recoupment this year. We didn't apply for recoupment this year. If we see that there's cause for recoupment, we will ask for that replacement in the next year. Are there any questions? Super exciting stuff.
Yeah.
It's good, thank you
Good
for
stuff.
doing
Yeah,
all of
thanks,
that
Matt.
math
Yeah.
and figuring it out
It's a
for
lot.
us now.
It's
Good
thanks,
information,
Matt.
thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Matt.
thank you.
Okay, all right, with that, I'll call our meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And then, do we have any citizens' comments this evening? No? Okay, that brings us to our favorite part. Yeah. Spotlight on Brentwood.
Good evening, everyone. Give me just a second to switch this up here. Okay. All right, so thanks for giving me a few minutes to go over some highlights since we last met on the second day of school. So a lot has happened since then, so let's get right into it. As you know, we split everything up into our 4 strategic plan buckets of student success, school culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and then unified community engagement. So let's start with our student success.
Yeah.
It's okay, I was gonna say, this is the only part of the agenda I don't check ahead of time, because I like to be surprised, so it's just an extra couple of minutes, it's good.
It's so weird.
Is the keyboard not working?
No.
Really?
So we can maybe just pull it up from the.
If I touch it up here, will it do it?
Try it.
Scroll down and at least.
Okay.
There
I'll try it one more time since.
There we go.
Let's unplug everything. Okay, student success. Wonderful. All right, so this young man is Brentwood High School senior Alexander Tung, and he has been named a semifinalist in the 71st Annual National Merit Scholarship Program, one of 16,000 students nationwide to receive this honor. More than 1.3 million students entered the competition by taking the PSAT in their junior year. Semifinalists represent fewer than 1% of U.S. high school seniors and are the highest achievers in each state. About 95% of semifinalists advance to the finalist standing, and roughly half of those will receive one of about 7,000 scholarships worth a combined total of $26 million. So very big, very cool news for Alex. So, all right. Next one is the Brentwood High School class of 2027. Recently attended a college and career fair at Webster University, hosted by the Missouri Association of College Admissions Counseling. So more than 70 colleges and universities from across the nation were represented, and students had an opportunity to connect directly with representatives, ask questions, explore future opportunities. So like we say, not every student has to go to college, but every student can be college ready. So this is just one of those opportunities, planting that seed early in their junior year, getting them exposed to talking to different universities and programs throughout the country to just start putting those feelers out to see what they want to do post-secondary. And then going from our oldest learners to some of our youngest learners in kindergarten. So on the left, we have the kindergartners at McGrath. They
And Sophie and Henley, I believe, are the two of my friends who wanted to hold my hand.
Kindergartners at McGrath recently held their I Love Reading celebration, where they took a parade around the school and were cheered on by their upperclassmen. On the right side there, Mark Twain kindergartners are practicing counting, so little plastic teddy bears put on different things. Just a really, it was amazing to see at the kindergarten level. I mean, this was just a few weeks in to school. I wasn't at the McGrath celebration, but taking those photos at Mark Twain in the kindergarten classroom, these kids were focused on what they were doing, and kids like this student was doing these things, but there were kids doing different activities. They were all counting and doing things, but they were all doing different little activities. It was just unbelievable to see, I think, and just to give shouts out to our kindergarten team, Erin Goodwin, that's her at Mark Twain, and Carrie Speck at Mark Twain, and Megan King and Rachel Opal at McGrath. They just do an excellent job, like building the foundation, literacy, math, to support future success. So, all right, so school culture. And this seems like forever ago, but this was the first week of school. This was that Friday, August 22nd, I think. But this was our first ever 612 pep rally. So students and staff packed the gym for our first ever 612 pep rally, uniting middle and high school students and staff in one celebration of fall sports and school spirit. So just a really excellent way to kick off a new school year, united as 612. Lots of energy, lots of purple, lots of engagement, music, just the whole thing. When we go around it, we still heard it, and we heard it this morning from our parent leadership group about kids were coming home and they were still talking about the pep rally, especially the middle school kids who were just excited to be included in that. So just awesome. A great example of school culture and building that 612 program. And then this one. Our sixth graders take on the great outdoors. So our sixth graders tackled outdoor challenges, built new skills, and strengthened friendships at the Touch of Nature Outdoor Education Center just outside of Carbondale, Illinois. This was the second year for our sixth grade camp. Experiences encourage students to step outside their comfort zone and grow together as a class. I don't know anything more than representing stepping outside your comfort zone than that thing, whatever that is. I know Amy and I went last year, so I know what it is. You wouldn't get me up there with the safest harness and all the helmets and protection in the world. But just a great example, a great opportunity. It's more than just like a field trip. It's an experience that kids will be able to remember for the rest of their Brentwood experience and then on. So, all right, and into unified community engagement, there's a lot, so just stick with me. All right, so starting at the top left and going around clockwise, and he's not here, Keith. We hosted the Missouri School Boards Association regional meeting, bringing together school board members and administrators from across the St. Louis region. Brentwood Pride was on full display with our middle school cheerleaders welcoming everyone in, our high school jazz band filling the gym with music, and our student council volunteers kind of getting everyone from parking into the space. So just a great event. A great way to say like, hey, we're here, we exist. Not only do we just exist, we're fantastic, and look at our buildings, look at our students, look at the artwork, listen to the music. So just a great way to like a coming out party kind of. And people love the cheerleaders.
They love them.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of comments that are like, your cheerleaders were adorable. And weeks later, we were at lunch and they were talking about how great they
I
were.
have a feeing that future MSBA meetings, there will be talk of, we're gonna have are they gonna be cheerleaders? We gotta have people, pom-poms welcoming us.
Yeah.
So, but to the right of that, we had an amazing turnout at our first ever Tailgates Teammates in School Spirit event. We don't know for sure, so we'll say hundreds of students, staff, families, and community members came together to cheer, connect, and celebrate, what makes Brentwood such a special place to learn and grow. We don't know for sure, but we served over 480 meals. So I'm sure middle schoolers and high schoolers went up for seconds or thirds, but
I saw a lot of familiar faces. Definitely had a couple hot dogs already.
but there was definitely a steady flow of people in throughout the game, sitting in the stands, cheering on. A great game, a great night. Weather was phenomenal, so it was just a really, really cool thing. Looking at doing something, well, not tomorrow, Wednesday, Volley for a Cure starting at 4 o'clock in the gym. So kind of the volleyball version of an event like this. Then looking at doing something like this for winter sports, and then a tailgate thing like that for girls soccer in the spring, along with other types of events like that, just to get the community out. So moving down, the Brentwood High School Alumni Association welcomed graduates from 9 decades to its all-school reunion. This was September 19th, that Friday of Brentwood Days and Homecoming. Since its founding in 2003, the Alumni Association has invested more than $440,000 in scholarships for graduating seniors. So it's just a really fun opportunity. Lots of smiles, lots of people sitting at tables, stories being told, tours being given. Andy Hartnett is there. He does a great job taking people around, showing everybody what's new, what's different, what's still the same, what's been preserved. Just a really cool event. And to have it on that third Friday in line with Brentwood Days, getting people back and having our alumni in there is nice. And then the last one there, approximately 285 participants joined us for this year's Brentwood Community 5K and Fun Run, organized by the Brentwood Middle School PTO. This event raised nearly $10,000 to support middle school experiences, just like the 6th grade camp we talked about, up from $8,000 from last year. So this was the second year for it. So more participants, more money raised, just another great, and doing it on the weekend of Brentwood days, it's just a natural fit. So really great event. And then we all remember this. So that same day, just a couple hours later, we did the Brentwood Days Parade. So top left, going around clockwise, Van Jackson, our support staff person of the year, had a blast in the back of the truck. Our early childhood and PAT folks giving out bubbles, lots of hugs from our littlest ones. And then Lindsay's, I gotta get Lindsay doing something every time waving or talking. I got a good one to you.
This is better than the run one.
I got a really good one of Ryan that I used, or Ryan Flynn, and I made him do it twice. He threw candy at me, and I didn't really get it, so I was like, stop, and I went down the street a little bit, and I was like, all right, do it again, and I got a really good one. So
You just wanted to
2 for 2, right?
Yeah.
We know that game.
Yeah. So, and then Mark Twain, they had Debbie Stinson's husband does like an electric VW bus thing. It was just really cool and unique. And so once again, just a great showcase of the strength and spirit of Brentwood. And I put this in there because so this was after the skies opened up and just poured down rain on everyone. So kudos to all of you for hanging in there and sticking it out and finishing the parade. It was kind of like when you're wet, you're just like, I'm going to be wet for the rest of however long this is. There's nothing you can do to be dry or to take cover. So it's just like, this is just happening. So just a great event. Lots of smiles, even soaked to the bone. So, any questions for tonight?
No, it's
Awesome.
awesome.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right, Kate, if we could do roll call, please.
Mark Cicero, Katie Clark,
Here.
Ryan Dotson.
Here.
Ryan Flynn,
Here?
Keith Ravenberg, Katie Spall,
Here.
Lindsey Spencer.
Here. Thank you. If I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined. Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. And that moves us into our superintendent's report.
Great, we're gonna have Matt Nord come right back up to ask for approval of the tax rate.
And there was your recommended motion written in the slide.
Do I need to make a motion?
Please.
I'll make a motion to approve the tax rates as outlined.
I think it's
Second.
All right, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tax rates are approved.
All right, thank you.
That was an easier one. All right, I'm gonna ask Dr. Hostetler to come on up and share the SSD partnership agreement. We have Dr. Len, Executive Director of Partner Districts, who is here as well while we do the presentation.
Great.
Hello.
Hi.
Let's see if this works. And I already know that you've previewed this because it's not your most favorite part of the agenda, right?
We have previewed it, yes.
Of course.
So, oh, good. So, this is.
Does it work?
Nope, just the keyboard's gonna work. So in here, this is the same thing that we go over every year is our partnership agreement. There have been some updates to the partnership agreement this year. We covered some of this summer in our board retreat as well. And so on the background of this is the explanation of IDA, which we meet and we discuss on a regular basis. So the main thing I want to cover within the agreement this year is where Ronnie and I met last week and did our ratings that we do on our partnership agreement. We rated all the different areas, and then we identified key goals that also align with our goals for the district. So, and they're long, but I put the specific goals in there so you guys had them to look at, and you could see where we were headed with them, and that was based off of the feedback from staff, and then the community, and then what we also discussed this summer with the strategic planning. And then you can also see down here, it's the view only, but that is the full partnership agreement. and you can see where we rated. I put those in there, and then you can also see what our overall rating scales were. And we're in the high 90s, so we were in a really good spot within those, but some of the areas that we did identify where we needed to continue to work on was in some of, and it's part of, one of those areas where we've shifted some of those different aspects within special school district and within the partnership agreement. So on there, you will see, let me go to that piece of that. The goal 1 was expanding the instructional technology and support of access in the least restrictive environment. And so one of the things that I looked at, again, this summer, we talked about a little bit, this summer is 80% of the students that we service here in Brentwood are in the general education setting, 80% or more of the time. And right now we're about 17% of the Brentwood student body has an IEP serviced by special school district. So one of the things that we've talked about is that instructional technology. So once there's a student who has access to special school district, then there's a lot of them have access to assistive technology through that aspect. But one of the other pieces that we're really working on is expanding the knowledge and access to the resources that we have in special school district, and also using those within that MTSS, those multi-tiered systems of supports. So part of that was specific to technology. So those are some of the action steps that we laid out to look at, because those were some of those areas that here in Brentwood, because we are smaller, we don't necessarily have somebody who's dedicated to instructional technology that would be embedded with that one-to-one in our classrooms. So that was an area of focus for us. Any questions on that goal? And then you'll see there was the overall partnership summary. Really, some of the strongest strengths for us were the collaboration and shared responsibility, teaching and learning. That has been something that over the last 2 years, well, it feels like more.
It feels like it's been more than a year.
Because you've been here since January of the year before. But really that teaching and learning alignment, and so that's really been a focus for us, elementary and secondary, and that shared teaching responsibility, and really the coaching and supports within classrooms at each of those buildings, working with building administration and the classroom teachers within all of those different aspects, and you can really see where that commitment has shown. And then the student first commitment, and so working within that commitment to students first, and that really showed within our ratings, and also with our principal collaboration tool. So that's one of the other things that we do with each of the building principals every year. So I do it in the fall and we do it in the spring. And so within that, we've really seen that shift happen over time as well. So again, the areas of focus, the instructional technology, student services, ensuring that services in the least restrictive environment score 2, strengthening of tier 1 of MTSS alignment will help with that. So one of the things that we're also in this year within special school district is a cohort with special school district, and so part of our professional development with building principals, and as a district is working with a facilitator from the special school district to really strengthen up some of those processes, and our main focus has been on social, emotional, and behavioral, which has been something we've talked about here in the district here for several years. And then one of the focuses specific to special school district staff is really focusing on training of the IEP team, so those case managers and building their expertise and knowledge, and then also the role of each of the individuals within the IEP team process. So if it's the building principal, the classroom teacher, continuing to work with parents, and advocating, and then also those aspects and those resources they have available to them as being part of St. Louis County. Then the reflection, again, we have a really strong partnership. We're actually recognized within that when we meet with the county, and throughout, we have one of the highest ratings of students within our least restrictive environment, 80% or more, and it's a very diverse group of students that are in our least restrictive environment. Looking at our students who are identified by disability areas, our highest one is other health impairment, followed by autism, which is across the district. And within that comes, those are what we've talked about before, those more global disabilities, so they impact them in almost every aspect of life. And so within that, that also means wherever they are within their classrooms, that means that they're impacted. So that also ends up requiring some additional professional development, and what does that look like? And so that is working and partnering with building principals and within classroom teachers, and really building that knowledge and strength across the environment to support students. I think that's, again, that tier 1. That's when we talk about that tier 1, that is where the majority of our students, Brentwood students are. And when you're receiving services from special school district, again, want to reiterate reiterate that special education is the and, so you get tier 1, which is what you get in the classroom setting. Tier 2 is all those different supports if you may need them because you need a little bit of extra help, and then you also get special school district or special education supports on top of that. And so there's also all the different public-facing websites that you can see where all of the percentages and everything are blocked out as well, and you can walk through all of those as well. And then this is again the other goal that we have that I already discussed. Anything else? Some important dates. Partnership agreement, which we have to do. General assurance document that gets sent in. And then the principal collaboration tools. So I've turned all of those in for our review. And then our partnership agreement that will be signed by both superintendents, both board presidents, and then we send those back in to special school district. And really it's that agreement that we're going to work together within those different aspects. And then the summer, the partnership agreement is something else that will be reviewed. It's reviewed continuously. And when we create that partnership agreement, it is done in conjunction with partner districts. And so we typically, the last time we reviewed it, Dr. Tripp-Rammer and I were part of that committee. And so I anticipate, again, volunteering to be a part of that when we look at those language and how all that is laid out. Any questions?
Well, if I could get a motion to approve the SSD partnership agreement.
I make a motion to approve the SSD partnership agreement as outlined. Second.
All right, any discussion? Thank you for the strong collaboration and all the work that you're doing
Thank you.
to make this move smoothly and supporting our students, so certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's approved. Thank you.
I'm gonna let
Thank you.
Ronnie change
Thank
whatever she
you.
needs.
Next up, we have Dr. Zagora with the
Okay,
Promise
that's
Gifted
not
update
anymore.
as we transition.
Hey, do you know where I would find it?
Yeah.
Is it-
So many cords.
Good, because I'm gonna need that
We're
too.
gonna have to Tony and I talk about it every time. We do, we just need to make
There
it
it
work
is.
easier.
Okay. Okay, cool, thank you. All right. Yep, we're good, okay. Good evening. I'm excited to give you an update of our gifted program tonight, where we've been, where we're going, what some of our goals are. As you know, we have a new lead teacher this year who has got off to a really strong start, and we're excited to take a fresh look at some of the things that we've been doing in our gifted program, but also continue a lot of the strong characteristics that it's had for many years. So I wanted to start tonight by just, I'm sure this is common knowledge, but I think it's always helpful to just start with a frame of who are we talking about when we talk about our gifted learners. And so what I've compiled here is a list of a number of characteristics of gifted learners, and not all gifted students are going to manifest all of these characteristics, but I do think it helps to just highlight in what ways a student who is in need of gifted services might be different from a student who is just a typical high achiever. And so what we notice with students who benefit from gifted services is that they often have a level of curiosity or energy or divergent thinking that needs to be satisfied in some sort of way that is not always part of the Tier 1 curriculum. And so gifted services are intended to meet that need outside of the classroom. But I will also say that our new gifted teacher is really interested in pushing into the classroom more as well. And I know she's done that quite a bit just these first few weeks of school as her gifted groups are getting started up. Also important to note that a lot of these traits come with their own set of challenges for gifted learners. And so part of the reason that gifted services are really important for students is that they need a little bit of extra support and extra instruction to help counteract some of the challenges that come with being gifted. For example, sometimes being a bit disorganized, having difficulty with their train of thought being disrupted and having to shift to new tasks. Sometimes gifted learners may not want to work with others, or they may get impatient with others if they feel like they the person they're working with isn't thinking quickly enough to keep up with them, and there are some social emotional challenges that can go with being a gifted learner as well. So again, not all of these apply to every student. They're all one of a kind. Also wanted to include some common myths of gifted learners. Most commonly, that gifted students are going to be fine no matter what. Right? They can learn on their own. They don't need extra support at school, and that's usually not typical of a gifted learner. Some gifted learners, if left to their own devices, might be perfectly fine, but others might go in the other direction and shut down, become bored. There are statistics about dropout rates with students who are gifted because they didn't feel like they were adequately challenged in school. So they do need something that is different from a typical learner. It is not true that gifted students will excel in all subjects. Many students are gifted in one or two areas, but not another area, and so you may have gifted students that are extremely high achieving in math, but really struggle with writing. Similarly, you may have students who qualify for gifted services that also qualify for special education, because it is certainly possible that a student may have a disability and have characteristics of giftedness. And so similarly, they don't always get the best grades. Some gifted students can be extremely socially and emotionally mature, and some may not be. They may be intellectually very advanced, but they may struggle fitting in socially and emotionally with other students. And ultimately, it is not expected that all gifted students are going to be model students and well-behaved and compliant. And so that's something that's important to keep in mind too. When we work with students and we go through that identification process, sometimes a student who maybe has not been especially compliant or well-behaved, I'll put that in air quotes because we all define that differently. Sometimes that is a manifestation of, I need more stimulation in my learning, and so therefore that might be a gifted student who just isn't showing up like a typical high-achieving learner. So in order to meet those needs, a gifted education is really important as really an intervention for students whose needs go beyond what can typically be met in a general ed classroom. It's a targeted intervention to go beyond a Tier 1 curriculum. Gifted education provides a community of learners for students who may not always think like all their peers in their classroom. And so to give students that community where they can engage with others who think like they do, where they can have that outlet for their creative energy, their divergent thinking, it keeps them engaged in their education and helps to minimize that risk of students disengaging because they don't feel like their needs are being met. And then also provide support in developing the social, emotional, and behavioral skills. And in a gifted classroom, one of the best things that gifted educators can do is explicitly teach, this is what your gifted characteristics, where they may present barriers or struggles for you, and here's how to overcome those. So that social, emotional learning is really key in the gifted classroom as well. So, on to how we do things here in Brentwood. DESE does have a set of guidelines for gifted program identification, and then what a program should look like once you've identified that population in your district. And so, under the guidelines per DESE, all schools have to do universal screening, which means all of our students at designated grade levels will be screened to determine if we need further evaluation, if that student might potentially benefit from gifted services. And so the criteria are intended to eliminate as much bias as possible. We here in Brentwood, we use a creativity screener, we use a nonverbal reasoning screener, and then we also look at our achievement tests, which historically elementary would have been NWEA, now we've shifted over to iReady. That nonverbal piece is really important because we start screening students in kindergarten, and so they have not typically learned how to read yet. We also have a number of students whose first language is not English. And so using those nonverbal screeners also helps identify students who may have gifted characteristics, but on a traditional verbal assessment may not be able to demonstrate that. And then under DESE's guidelines, a student has to qualify in 3 out of 4 criteria to be placed in gifted services. And so the 4 criteria that DESE outlines are what they call a general mental ability index. Typically, this is more commonly referred to as an IQ test. The state says that the minimum must be that student is in the 95th percentile or higher, although districts are permitted to set their own criteria above 95th percentile if appropriate. They also have to demonstrate academic ability, which for most districts, including Brentwood, is using some kind of achievement test like our iReady, our NWEA. They have to demonstrate creativity, problem solving, or reasoning ability outside the norm. Outstanding ability is what the guidelines say. Because there are so many screeners out there when it comes to reasoning, problem solving, creativity, they don't set a percentile because not all of those assessments are scored with nationally normed percentiles, and so it depends on which assessments you choose. And then their fourth category is other documented evidence of exceptional performance. So what this could look like is, for example, some districts use rating scales where the teacher would rate gifted characteristics of the student that they may or may not see in the classroom. This is something that we're looking at. It's not been our practice here in Brentwood formally to have any kind of teacher rating scale, although certainly it has always been a conversation between the teacher and the gifted specialist. If the teacher say, I'm noticing some things about this kid, I think that you'd be able to dig a little bit deeper. But we're going to be taking a look at that this year to determine if that needs to be a piece of our screening process. And we are working with, I'll get to this later, but we're working also with educational psych examiners and retired director of gifted education, so people who have been in this world, so that Kara and myself are not making these decisions. We are not school psychologists.
Can I ask a question on
Yes.
the first one, the general mental ability index?
Yes.
Are we screening for that?
No, this is not. So yeah, this is all of the criteria that would determine placement in the program. That IQ test is only given as the final phase of the eligibility process. So I'll kind of walk through how that plays out. So those are the DESE requirements. In Brentwood, what we do is we universally screen all our students in kindergarten, first, and third grade. And then any students who are new to Brentwood in grades 2, 4, and 5 will all be screened for the gifted program. Any students who meet at least 2 criteria, so the 3 screening criteria being academic ability or achievement, a creativity assessment, and a nonverbal reasoning assessment. Any student who qualifies in 2 of those 3 will move on to the WISC test, which the WISC 5 is the version of the IQ test that is used, I would say, by most districts who use an IQ test. That is the one. It's designed for children. And so they would move on to that phase of testing. And then if the student scores at least a 130 in one of 3, either full scale IQ or one of 2 index scores, the nonverbal index or the general abilities index. So they have to get a score of 130 on one of those 3 measures of the WISC test to be placed in the gifted program. That places students typically in the 98th percentile or above. So the reason that we look at 3 different index scores instead of just the full scale IQ is that the nonverbal eliminates any of the verbal comprehension requirements, especially, like I said, for students whose English language is more limited, or for students who haven't yet developed their full battery of literacy skills. And then the general abilities index, what that does is it places more weight on the reasoning, the fluid reasoning parts of the test, and it removes things like processing speed and working memory. Because processing speed, some students may be much slower to process, but they still arrive at the same conclusion as a student who processes more quickly. So we didn't want that, and I say we, the general gifted educator community has used the GAI so that students aren't being eliminated by either their processing speed or working memory. And really what that working memory assessment is students are given a sequence of things to memorize, and then they kind of spit that sequence out back to you. Some students are going to be great at that because they have strong working memory, but they may not have other characteristics of giftedness, or vice versa. So in opening it to any of those 3 scores, it makes sure that we are casting a wide net to capture students who demonstrate need for gifted services. So here in Brentwood, as it stands, we have about 13% of our elementary students that have been identified for gifted services. The state guidelines suggest that you should universally screen, you should move about 10 to 20% of your students on for further evaluation, and that ultimately about 5% of a district's population should qualify for gifted services. We're at about 13%, which feels like a pretty comfortable number. The more I learn about our process and how we go through our screening and how deliberate we are to take different measures, I do feel like we currently sit in a pretty good place with 13%. Some districts are higher, some districts are lower. And the way typically that a district might adjust the number of students they're capturing is that they can adjust that IQ criteria. And so some districts go as low as 125. I think 130 is probably the high end, but it does have to be above the 95th percentile. So we've been, as far as I know, again, I'm in year 2, but my understanding is we have used that score of 130 for quite some time, and it does seem to be capturing a significant number of students who are very successful and getting what they need out of our gifted program.
I think and you may be mentioning this next, but you guys have been hearing us talk about MTSS and Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. And I think speaking to the idea that when this is looked at, when you look at gifted services as an intervention, you want your Tier 1 to make sure that it's hitting the needs of about 80%, 80 to 85% of your students. So having a 13% it fits in that area where they need additional. If you start seeing numbers above 20%, that tells you that actually your entire Tier 1 needs to be different because it's not meeting the needs of that 80 to 85%. So that, the reality is that your general education needs to be shifted, and you see that in some of the high-performing districts often. We saw Noah do a lot of, like, what does Tier 1 really look like, because the numbers, so many of our students were at that 130-ish. So Tier 1 needed to look different to be challenging. And so I think that's also a layer, not to misspeak of.
No, that's,
Just hearing that language you hear from us all the time around MTSS, that's how kind of gifted fits too, in that kind of, when we're thinking of percentages and how the structure is supporting students.
So I got just one quick question.
Yeah.
So students that come in, I'll use just in 3rd grade, and they were gifted at a different district, and
Yes.
they come into our district. I guess, why do they need to be screened again? And then why are we only screening in 2nd, 4th, and 5th grade?
So for students who come new to, if they were in a gifted program in their previous district and they have the data, the qualifying data, the test scores and everything, and they meet our criteria, then we would place them.
Would that be within state or out, like, let's say they're in different states?
Yeah, there's not necessarily like a state set criteria.
Okay.
Generally, like if they came in with achievement scores and an IQ test that meet our criteria, then and had been in a gifted program prior, then we would be The reason why we don't do the universal screeners in more grade levels than K1 and 3 is that, so for students who get to the stage of the WISC test, a student really should only be tested in that once every 12 months, and so we would have to be careful to the results are invalid if they're tested more than once within 12 months, and so we try to spread it out. If they've been with us all along and they get to 4th or 5th grade, I will tell you of the group of students that we just finished with testing for this fall, there were very few 4th or 5th graders because we caught them earlier. So generally that's why we want to catch them in the younger grades so that we can then start providing those services before they get to the upper elementary grades.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question
Yes.
on the criteria that's used for placing when it says academic ability minimum 95th percentile. Is that like if it's just in math? Like does
Great
that?
question. Either or.
Okay.
Yeah. So a student who is above the 95th percentile on the iReady test in either math or reading is one we're going to take a closer look at. Again, they're going to get also that creativity, problem solving, reasoning screener. But yeah. So this year we have a few things on the horizon that I'll be working with Kara, our gifted teacher, and some additional consultants on. We would like to review and revise our screening and eligibility process. I feel pretty strongly that we are sitting in a good place relative to other districts in our process. However, one of our screening tools we're likely to update, a newer version has come out since we last revised our screening process, so we'll be looking at that newer version of the reasoning screener. And then we will also be asking a school psychologist to come in and do our screening as a third party. So when Kyle Henderson was in this role, it had gotten to a point where Kyle was comfortable giving those screeners to all of the students. Kara being new, not being trained in using those tools, and also we think it's helpful to have fresh eyes come in and have an objective person come in and do those screeners with our students. So we'll be working with a consultant to do that. We also want to shorten our timeline So the timeline has been that those universal screenings happen at the end of a school year, and then students who move on to the IQ testing phase would get that IQ test in August and September, which is what we just completed. Those notices are going out later this week. It's not ideal because then students who have been identified for the LEAP program, they don't get to join their LEAP classmates until a few weeks after the year has kicked off. So what we'd like to do is shorten that timeline, do our universal screening in February, March, get our IQ testing done before the end of the school year so that those students who are eligible can start with their classmates at the beginning of a new school year. We have also expanded our network. Again, being a small operation here in Brentwood, we want to make sure that we are always keeping up with the latest, the changes, the best practices when it comes to gifted education. So Kara, our new teacher, has joined about every professional network that she can, the Regional Gifted Assessment Council, the State Gifted Association, and we have paired her up with a mentor teacher from Kirkwood School District, who is an elementary, veteran elementary gifted specialist in Kirkwood, who has been wonderful and is meeting with Kara once a week and giving her a lot of resources and ideas. I, over the summer, had meetings with gifted specialists or gifted program coordinators in Kirkwood and in Ladue. So we are certainly gathering all the information we can to make sure that Brentwood is keeping pace and is really excelling in the area of gifted education. One other thing we would like to do before the year is up, I probably should, let Kara get her feet on the ground a little bit before I ask that we self-assess where we are. But DESE does provide a nice self-assessment for gifted programs to just make sure that we are, number one, fully compliant, which we are. I have no concerns about that, but also that we are continuing to monitor our implementation, set goals, always strive to improve. So we'll be looking at that closer to the end of the school year. And then beyond this school year, we are going to build a middle school gifted program. So we are excited that here in the near future, we will have, I can't tell you what it's going to look like because we've got a lot of work to do, but there will be something for our middle school students who come out of LEAP and get to middle school, where currently they don't have gifted services or gifted minutes. They can take the honors or the challenge courses that are offered at middle school, but we want to make sure that our students who need gifted services in middle school have a teacher that they can work with, that they have an explicit place and time that they can continue to get gifted education needs met. We also need to revisit our curriculum for grades K-8 for gifted. We would love to build some experiential or service learning opportunities for those gifted cohorts. And then also, looking down the road, explore the potential for combining the gifted programs at Mark Twain and McGrath. So as a smaller district, that means our gifted numbers are small. So in each building at each grade level, those numbers are in single digits. And so to be able to bring those students together, and instead of working with just 4 third graders, you're now working with 9 or 10 third graders. And obviously, the big barrier there would be transportation. How do we get them from A to B? I hear maybe there's an electric bus. So we would like to look at that. I think it could make for a really robust program to be able to bring those students together and build experiences for them that are not just in their own elementary school.
So with the expanding to the middle school, would the screening also expand with that program?
Yes.
Okay. And then what about the kids that are close, that don't make it in? How are they being enhanced to be able to excel themselves?
Yeah. So that is certainly a goal of ours, especially having a new teacher with fresh eyes who is very open to doing things differently. We've talked a lot about having Kara push into those classrooms to work with students, whether it's differentiated math or reading groups, or maybe it's just going in and doing some creativity lessons with students. Part of the elementary workshop model of teaching is to be able to differentiate when it comes to just those explicitly academic needs, so that students are getting enrichment math or reading, but also just some of the more divergent thinking and logic tasks that would really benefit all kids, is utilizing Kara in that way to work out a schedule where she has time that she can push in and work with those students.
Hey, what about so the gifted program, does it typically stop in middle school, or do other districts also have it in high school?
Yeah, it depends on the district. Those that do have it all the way through high school, it looks very different. So most high schools that have a gifted program, by the time the students get there, it's more like a gifted study hall sort of, where they're assigned to a gifted resource teacher who can help them with, sometimes it's study habits, it might be course scheduling, it may be college applications when they get further down the line. But that's the most common high school model, is that it's almost like an advisor / counselor that only serves gifted students.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, my high school had a gifted program for freshmen through juniors that was an English, it was the English credit for gifted people. So, I mean, there are other
Oh.
models of
You'll
figuring it
see
into-
that at the
Okay.
middle
It's
school.
something
So
missing.
one of the things that when it's probably been, I mean, I was an assistant too, so within the last 8-9 years, the gifted, it used to be the gifted programs, that they didn't have them in high school because the thought was like AP courses, like you have all these choices, kids can take more academically challenging. But as our understanding of gifted students, that again,
Yeah.
the myths are a huge part of it. The idea being that as they get older, there needs to be more than just the academic piece, it's the social and emotional, the counseling, it's the pushing and challenging students, because often that's where you see that sometimes the disconnect. Like, I love math, so I'm gonna fly in math, but I'm not gonna write anything.
I don't want to not
Quoting.
be good.
Yeah, I don't wanna be good at that, so I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
So that's why at the high school level, it's really changed over the last decade or so of looking at that more from the, and some of it's just the SEL needs of students in general too, but we see that a lot with the gifted population is that kind of model at the high school level. Because there are academically, there's just a lot of options to challenge students at the high school level. And even middle school you can see various versions of that, whether it be a standalone gifted class or like a gifted content area. And I just went through a deep analysis in my old role around the different ways it can look at the middle school level. And so there's lots of people kind of playing around with different things. I know Lindbergh was doing that too. So there's a lot of people trying to figure out that secondary model of the gifted resources and what that looks like. It can be a
The
lot of
challenge
different
becomes,
things.
do you set it up where the student chooses a gifted block in their schedule in place of an elective, for example? Which means there's a trade-off there, and how do you design a middle or high school program where they don't have to make that trade-off?
So just trying to find those different pieces. So there's pros and cons to a lot of different models, but we'll look into all of those as we build the program. But we're in a very good spot.
What would a parent do though in high school or middle school today who has a gifted child? What can we do until we have an actual gifted program pulled together? What can a parent do?
Be in touch with your child's teachers and counselor if you think that their needs are not being met. And I would say that's true, obviously, for any parent. I would love for that to at least be part of transition meetings for students, so that the teachers receiving those students know that these students have been involved in LEAP in the past and may have needs that are somewhat different. And they have those transition meetings, and I don't know how prominently the gifted program plays a role in those conversations, but I think that's something that would be really helpful.
One of the things Ronnie and I have talked about too that I think is super important is educating our teachers on the characteristics of gifted students and helping them, find ways. And that's where, having Kara push in is a really important thing, because gifted services are 2.5 hours a week. Students are gifted every day. So making sure that our teachers feel comfortable academically challenging our students. And that's the beauty of Brentwood and our class sizes and our small size of getting to know our students, but making sure that teachers are equipped with the supports for how to challenge our students academically, while also, and this is, again, I would argue this is true for all students, knowing your students well enough to know what the push is to make sure that they're growing, while also meeting their kind of social and emotional needs. And that's the trick of teaching. It's a hard job, but that's what we want to make sure they have the supports and the resources for. But I would echo Ronnie's, the starting spot right now is our classroom teachers and our counselor. And like we said, it should be short order that we'll be able to get the middle school up and running.
Is there consistency of what kids are going into the gifted program? For example, only those that qualify are consistently in the class and other kids aren't joining in?
You mean over the course of their
No, not only in
matriculation
growth
across years?
of qualification, but I think I've heard informally about sitting in on classes, and wouldn't that dilute the effectiveness of the gifted classes themselves?
Are you saying at the middle school level or at the elementary?
Elementary level, yeah, because that's where we have it today.
I'm sorry, I'm still not clear on the question. That the gifted students are being
Is it only,
Are non-gifted
students sometimes
Yes.
being included in the gifted activities, and does that dilute the experience for the gifted children?
I would have to do some more learning around that, because I've not heard that.
Okay.
I've not observed that,
Yeah, that should not,
so.
That should not be by practice.
yeah, by
Should be-
practice,
No.
no,
Okay,
that should
thank
not.
you.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah.
And just one last point of clarification,
Yeah.
when you mentioned it's 13%, is that just elementary
It is.
school?
That's just elementary, yeah.
It would be very interesting to look at the entire district, because as kids are out of elementary school, they're still kids, I know several in high school that were in the gifted program.
Yes.
So I understand the whole,
Yes.
the
So
entirety
what
of
I just to clarify where the data came from. So what I only looked at K-5, like a
Sure,
snapshot
yeah,
of today.
yeah.
But when a student is tagged as receiving gifted services in our system, like that tag stays with them all the way
Sure,
through,
yeah.
even though the services don't continue in
Yeah.
middle high. So I would expect, if historically we've hovered in that 10 to 15% range, I would expect that district-wide we're in that 10 to 15% range, but I've not run those numbers. So yeah.
I think it'd be worthwhile just to see
Yeah.
where those numbers are at in the middle and high school.
I'm happy to look at.
Put it in the weekend.
Can I ask a couple more
Yeah,
questions?
certainly.
So has there been any consideration, other people think football, I think gifted program, so has there been any consideration of like trying to form some sort of inter-district partnership, even if it's not permanent, but some sort of sharing back and forth or collaboration between us and any other districts?
I'm certainly open to looking at what that could be. I think we've already opened the door to learning from other districts. I think the more we learn and understand what exists elsewhere, to the extent that we can create the experiences here, we will do that. If we do feel like we could draw some benefit from bringing students from multiple districts together, I wouldn't rule it out.
And then my other question is, when we, as a district, identify somebody that's exceptionally gifted, what kind of support do we give people around deciding whether or not they should maybe try to send their child to the PEGS program, or like, how do we help parents make that decision, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so I'm very familiar with the PEGS program since it was housed in my previous district. Here in Brentwood, I've had one conversation with one parent about PEGS so far. We do share that information with our counselors and our principals every year so that they know to share that with students who may qualify. That's a conversation that Kara and I will need to have as well, as if we see students popping up on our list that might qualify for PEGS. I think we're talking 99.5th percentile for PEGS, and so I would certainly want to make that option available to those families. Yeah.
What does PEGS stand for? Or is that the
Program for
gifted-
Exceptionally Gifted
Is
Students.
that part of the Gifted Resource Council? Is that what they provide?
So PEGS is a full-time program.
Oh, it is a
So
full-time
those,
program.
yeah, so those students would enroll full-time as PEGS students.
Oh, I got you.
Brentwood does pay the tuition for their participation in that program, but,
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, it is
Mhm.
it's a big commitment for a student who also like may have siblings here or something
Right,
like
yeah.
that. So I certainly want families to know it's an option.
Mhm.
Students who are exceptionally gifted often do struggle even in a typical gifted program, and so I would want every kid to get what they need. Our counselors have that information. And I'm glad that you asked that question though, because I need to put that on my list of things to talk to Kara about. So yeah,
It's very,
I'm-
very individualized conversation, because
Yeah.
to
So like,
Ron's point, it's.
would there be a meeting
so-
with a counselor, with the school counselor,
Yeah.
or how would the parent, just
yes.
so they can
So
get
it
the
would start,
decision?
yeah, it would start with the school counselor. And then actually over at the PEG site, they do, as part of the application process, they'll do a site visit, they'll have them come over, there's an interview. I mean, it's a really long process, but the PEGS program, they do a lot of that, like orientation for families that may be interested.
And we have had high school students go there
Yeah.
over the years. And
I just, as a parent, you would think, you would want somebody to say, well,
To
these are
help
the
you,
benefits,
yeah.
or, but
Yes.
you might want to also consider like
Yeah.
keeping them here because of X, Y, Z, that kind of thing.
So I think touring too, you can get.
Yeah, you could do a little
Yeah.
bit more.
Mhm.
I love that we have mentorship for Kara. That makes me so happy that we have a veteran person for her to pull from. In our district, when someone's mentoring, they get extra pay, extra duty. As Kirkwood, are we paying
We are.
Kirkwood?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes,
to
we are.
support her?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mhm. You have to take that. We are, right? Yes, we approved that today. I didn't see it.
That's how it comes up there. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for all of this
Thank you.
information.
Thank
This is
you.
a great overview.
That was great.
Oh, no, at the
MSBA.
MSBA. So this is just our standard MSBA maintenance agreement that we agreed to, remembering that we do our policies through MSBA, so the fun little updates that we get to do, we pay for those. It is based on our, Kate looked it up today, because somebody, Katie asked about how this number is derived.
That appears to be the standard rate, because the rate we're paying this year
It's the
is
same
like
we've been
maybe $40 more than we paid for the last 3 years or so.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other part is the
Policy.
membership.
Yeah.
And that varies, I wrote it down, it varies by some number that we get from Desier that we work on.
Yeah, some decimal rate they look up, and that's how they determine that, but this
Okay.
policy is for all of the policies.
Don't we also pay a similar, like, monthly subscription? Or no?
No, this
Yearly.
covers it for each year.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the MSBA full maintenance agreement as outlined.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. Okay, moves us to Board of Education. No MSBA delegate report. We do have the conference coming up in October, and Katie, Keith, Amy, and I are going, so we'll bring back lots of good information for
Very
you.
excited.
It's gonna be great.
It's very fun.
Should be a good time.
And last, I love Kansas City.
Yeah,
I
Kansas
love going there, yeah.
All right, Katie, SSD Governing Council reported we had a meeting.
Yes.
I'm gonna-
Yep, last Monday, September 22nd, so they do 3 in-person a month, 1 virtual. This one was virtual. So they went more into depth with new member orientation, so kind of each of the department heads were giving a brief overview of what, like technology, for example, gave an overview of the SSD technology. And then we approved a couple of minor budget changes. I think there was something in there about, there had been I guess an underestimate of how much substitute services would be needed for this year, as well as some non-certified services like audio, speech, language, that kind of thing. So there was a budget adjustment made there. And I think those were the major highlights.
Okay, thank you. And then board committee updates. I think one committee has met.
We did have our student experience board advisory. I don't know that we had 4 students, 2 middle school and 2 high school, come share with us and give us feedback around the strategic plan and what they were, what they liked, what the questions they had, what were some things they thought we could do as a district differently. I thought they gave us really great insight. Love more kids to come, and
Yeah, it was great.
it was a really good conversation, and I have the notes. I'll put them in the weekend. I think I put them in the weekend update after the meeting. That just kind of captured all of their different pieces of advice. But
Yeah, the pictures were in there.
And then the other board committees will be scheduling soon. I think there's gonna be one more blast out to community members to see if they're interested in participating on any of our committees, and then this will be scheduled in the next few weeks, I would
yes,
assume.
we're hoping to send that out soon. We are, as we know, the attendance kind of ebbs and flows as the year goes on. So the more people we can invite, hopefully we'll get, some good perspective and a variety of voices in the room. So.
Mhm. Okay, wonderful. And then 353 redevelopment
Yeah, so
might be kicking up. here.
It did, we did. There's actually 2 meetings. One was the redevelopment meeting, and then there was the economic development and sales tax meeting that we had this previous week. So it was really around realigning the officers. So we reelected that. But the big thing that came out of the redevelopment was there's a new kinder care going in on Manchester in the redevelopment area, right off of Manchester and, say, Porter Avenue. That's right. It's right by a transmission shop. They're putting in a kinder care, 12,000 square feet, along with like a playground, all fenced. They expect between 120 and 140 pre-K at this point. It doesn't impact us from a tax standpoint at all. They did get a sales tax abatement but that's just for the development of the property and construction. But there's no other tax that would impact us. But obviously, another kinder care going in for pre-K will impact us at some capacity potentially. So that was the big news that came out of there,
Right.
which is big news.
Yeah.
But it's good that there's development going on,
Yeah.
but, you know,
More families will become aware of Brentwood.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be great.
That
You'll
would be
make
great.
great elementary students.
Yes,
Yes.
great, great. Thank you for being a representative on that board.
Yep.
That, I didn't realize you had 2 additional meetings here.
there was 2, yeah.
We
Fun
appreciate
stuff.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then just last, our upcoming events, board policy meeting next.
So actually, if we don't mind chatting about this, we just got the board policies, Kate printed them out for me because I need paper copies today. None of them are timely that they have to be done October 7th, so it's really a matter of we can cancel that one since this one was pushed 2 weeks late and just bring all of them for the November one, or we can do a quick turnaround and share them with you in October. To me, it makes, they're both on my calendar, so it's not a huge deal either way. It's really a preference for the board.
If they're not pressing, my vote would be to go in November and.
That's fine.
There's nothing pressing. Yeah.
No, it's all like tweaks for the Senate bill, most of which we've already talked about, 68 or any of them that just need to get done over the course of the year. And most, if not all, are things we're already preparing for and taking action on, so.
Okay, so scratch that, no meeting on the 7th. Business meeting on the 21st, our conference that next week in Kansas City. We have a workshop or a policy meeting November 4th.
That one we will have, so
We
make
will
sure you mark your
have,
calendar, that one we will. We'll have those ones.
Okay. And then
Should
a
be
business
okay.
meeting in November, and then we roll into the holidays. My gosh, you guys.
Can I even
Go
Sorry,
quick.
I'm sorry.
say that?
Here's going quickly.
Yes.
So we
Okay.
do have a meeting on the 4th.
November 4th.
Yeah.
Election day.
Do we have school that day?
Yes. We are
Yes,
not a
Monday
board
we
plan.
have. Okay,
Oh.
that's good, that's right, I forget, that's my old world.
Yeah.
Very adamant, not that day.
Okay, well, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn. I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all, thank you all.
And a roll call.
Call roll.
Okay, we need to add, that's the one thing we need on
We
this
did so
agenda.
good today.
There's so many things. Roll call.
Mark Cicero, Katie Clark,
Yes.
Brian Dotson,
Yes.
Brian Flynn,
Yes.
Keith Ravenberg, Katie Ball,
Yes.
Lindsay Spencer.
Yes. Thank you, Kate.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for keeping us
everyone,
honest.
for
Thank you all.
coming, for coming, presenting.
Do you have
Hanging out with us.
I did.